Hey, how are you today? This is Josh Patrick, and you're at Cracking the Cash Flow Code. And my guest today is Joe Pine. Joe is the founder of Strategic Horizons, and you can find him at strategichorizons.com. But more importantly, he's the author of The Experienced Economy. And gosh, I forgot when that book came out, but it was way ahead of its time. And as we know today, experiences are way more impactful than stuff. So instead of me talking about my impression of experiences, let's bring the expert on and bring Joe on. Hey, Joe, how are you today?
I'm doing well, Josh. How are you?
I'm well, thanks so much for joining us. So let's talk a little about the experience economy. I mean, I went to one of your programs out in Colorado, had to be 10 years ago, if not longer.
Colorado was 2005. This at Keystone, I think, right?
Yeah.
Yep,
Oh,
yep.
so it's only 7 or 8 years ago. At any rate, I've always found his work really interesting, or your work really interesting. So, how did you guys discover that experiences trump stuff?
Well, we have to go back to early 1994 for that. You know, my first book that came out while I was working at IBM was called Mass Customization, about how you efficiently serve customers uniquely. And after I left IBM, it actually became a number one client for the first couple of years as they went back to do a lot of executive education for clients and IBM's consultants. And I was doing a class on it one day, a full day workshop, and I said something that I had often said, which is that mass customizing a good automatically turns it into a service, right? If you help somebody define exactly what they want, right, design what it is they're going to do, then you get that information back into operations to create something new for them. Well, then you don't put it in inventory as you do with goods. You deliver it on demand. You've got the intangible activity of helping people figure out what it is that they want. And all that means that it really is the service, right, of helping people figure that out and then defined and delivering it exactly to them on an individual basis. And so I said something to that effect, and one of the consultants in the back of the room was sort of a smart aleck, and he raised his hand. He said, "Well, you talk about service companies that mass customize. What does it turn a service into?" And I shot back that mass customization automatically turns a service into an experience. And as soon as I said it, I said, "Wow, that's good." Right? Hold on a second. I got to write that down. And I wrote it down and I started thinking about it, and I realized it was true that if you design an experience that's so appropriate for a particular person, exactly the experience that they need at this moment in time, then you can't help but make them go, wow, and turn it into a memorable event, turn it into an experience. So if that's true, then experiences as a distinct economic offering means there'd be an economy based off of experiences, right? Today we call that the experience economy, where it becomes the predominant economic offering, where it supplants not just the stuff of the, that we've had since the Industrial Revolution, but the services that came to the fore in the latter half of the 20th century. And originally, when I talked about it, I said that, like when we published the book in 1999 was when the book originally came out. We updated it in 2011, re-released it last year in hardcover with a new preview on competing for customer time, attention, and money. But back in 1999, we talk about the nascent experience economy, the forthcoming, the emerging experience economy. But now it's here, right? It's clear, even with the fact that the physical side of the experience economy was dead in the water for the last 15 months because of the COVID pandemic. You just saw the tremendous desire for those experiences and how much we miss those experiences because we do prefer them over stuff. That's where we've shifted our spending to, because that's where we recognize the value is, that we want those experiences.
Well, the truth is we remember experiences and we don't remember stuff.
Right, exactly. That is the I always call memorability is the hallmark of the experience. If people don't remember that interaction with you, then you didn't stage an experience.
Right. And if you don't stage an experience, you're likely to have a pretty wobbly customer, I would assume.
Yes, yes. The chances that they want to stay and come back with you are, lessen greatly when you don't create that experience within them.
Yes, I mean, like we're about to get our deck redone, and the experience that I've been having with our contractor has not filled me with warm, fuzzy feelings.
And that is so often the case, right? But it's not that hard, with contractors and and service businesses like that. The number one thing to understand is that when you want to stage an experience, is your work is theater. And that's not a metaphor. I don't mean work as theater. I literally mean work is theater. That whenever you're in front of customers, you're on stage and need to act in a way that engages the audience. And so that's what it takes. It takes, it takes focusing on not just the what, right? The activities, the functional things you have to do, like build a deck, like pound in nails, like give you a proposal or give you an invoice and so forth. It is how you go about doing those things, right? That's what can turn any mundane interaction into an engaging encounter.
Yeah, I think Dan Sullivan would talk about front stage and backstage activities.
Yeah, a lot of people do. The first time I ever saw that applied to business actually was in Dean McCannell's book, The Tourist. He's a USC professor, and if I remember right, that book came out in like 1976. I'd have to double check that, but it's been around for a long time. And he introduced the notion of front stage and backstage for businesses, particularly tourism, because he noticed that a lot of tourism companies like to give you a backstage tour. And in fact, and people love that, right? They get to see backstage. It lends, we wrote another book on authenticity, and it really does allow you to view things as authentic when you see behind. It's why, like, even in restaurants where they don't have the drop ceiling, they actually see all the pipes and everything through there, and it has a level of authenticity to it. So it's similar to that. And so people love that. But one of the things McCannell said was if you let people into your backstage, you need a backstage because you still need a place. This is important for business to understand. You still need a place where people can decompress, where they can take off the mask, so to speak. And I don't mean that derogatorily at all. But they cannot be on, right, is a way to think about it, right? You've done a lot of speaking and work with clients, and that when you're in front of clients, you're on. There's a little bit of adrenaline there that's going on, and you need a place to decompress, particularly if you're like me, who's basically an antisocial introvert. You need that backstage to be able to decompress and give you the energy to come back out on stage.
Yeah, that's I was just thinking about the chef's tables that exist in a lot of kitchens today of high-end restaurants. And I've got to assume that when that first started appearing, that the people cooking in the restaurant weren't thrilled about that.
Right.
Because having been on a line myself and run a food service business, I can tell you that there are things that go wrong about every 45 seconds. And the language is not always the cleanest that comes out when that happens.
Yep. And it is that they know they're being watched, right? And therefore they're on stage. I love quoting, there's famed stage director out of the UK, Peter Brook. And he wrote this wonderful little tome called The Empty Space. And the opening line of it, he says that I can take any empty space and call it a bare stage. And a man walks across this empty space while someone else is watching him. And that's all that is needed for an act of theater to be engaged. In other words, the simplest definition of acting is somebody else watches you work, right? That's what so when people are watching you work, you're on stage. That applies to chefs and other workers in a kitchen, applies to retail associates that are merely straightening merchandise. It applies to a guy doing your deck with you looking out the window at how it's going, a mechanic working on your car, whatever it might be. You're on stage when people are watching you.
Yeah, or just keeping you informed of what's going on. I mean, that's my issue with this contractor is He was supposed to have started a month ago, and he has yet to reach
Yeah.
out to us to say, hey, here's where we are. I have to reach out to him. And frankly, it's annoying.
Right, exactly, and that's and so the annoying part though is also something I like to say, that the easiest way to turn a service into an experience is to provide poor service, because then your customers remember. But that's, you don't remember the annoyances. You want them to remember the good things.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, Joe, you guys have, I mean, you've written books and you've done programs, and then recently you started a certification program. So, when someone gets certified, first of all, talk about the experience of going through your certification, which I assume would be interesting. And second, why would somebody want to do that?
Particularly if you knew the price, you'd ask, why in the world would somebody do that? It's always been a 4.5-day immersion in the experience account. And the public courses, my partner Jim Gilmore and I co-authored The Experience Economy and Authenticity, are there personally with you. And we do private courses for companies where Jim or I will do it alone, but you get access to us directly. You get 4.5 days with us, plus dinners and so forth. And you get immersed in our frameworks and in our exercises and in our techniques and our examples. We give you a workbook that lists, every example most every example that we talk about, that lists, shows you not just the exercises, but how to go about teaching them to others, which is the primary thing with a certified experience economy expert, that usually you're either a consultant that is working with clients who wants to do this, or you're an internal center of expertise around experiences, or you're even the CEO of the company, who really becomes the chief experience officer as well, to be able to infuse experiences throughout. You truly become expert. You get every question that you could possibly want answered. You get to learn what others are thinking of that are in that course with you, as well as access to our network of 300 plus certified experience economy experts around the world. And I always say the greatest compliment we get is that that many people, including our certified expert number 001, who was an independent consultant, pay us out of their own pockets for this, because they find the value in it. And we've had, those 300 people, at least 50 or more have paid it out of their own pockets to be a certified experience economy expert.
So they go, how many of these people go and help other businesses? I mean, let me ask you this question in a different way. When I talk about experience economy, people might say, yeah, interesting. Why would I want to do it? So when you go talk to somebody and they're considering what you do, what is the return on investment or the return on effort?
Well, the number one thing that I always point to is that it enables you to forestall the forces of commoditization. If you look at any industry, commoditization is like the law of gravity, right? It drags you down year after year. If you do nothing else, so you keep doing the same things you've always been doing, then you will be commoditized, right? It's just the natural force of things. And so you need to get out of that. And the only way to decommoditize is to differentiate, right? Now you can, and differentiation means innovation. Now, if you're a goods manufacturer, you can certainly innovate in goods and keep ahead of that commoditization curve, right? It's hard to do for a long time, but as long as you keep innovating, you look at Apple and other companies, then you're able to do that while still selling physical goods. Secondly, you can innovate in services, and it was when goods became commoditized that manufacturers started getting into more and more of the services, not just warranty services, but financial services of financing the goods, as well as then helping you use those goods. IBM, my old employer, for example, was a huge manufacturer, but they got into services by helping you manage your data center, by integrating your hardware, eventually into management consulting and so forth. And all of those are services that help them differentiate again themselves, where today, the lion's share of IBM's revenue and even a greater amount of its profit is from services, not from goods. Well, then the third thing you can do is you can go beyond that and get into the experience business. Again, whether you're a goods manufacturer, whether you're a service provider, you can differentiate by how you do what you do, again, by coming up with places where people can experience your offering. And one of the things we suggest to companies is, is a great place to start, is in marketing, is create marketing experiences that do the job of marketing by getting people to experience your goods before you buy them, because then the chances they will buy them go up. So it is all about that differentiation of decommoditizing. And I always say too that not every company has to shift to experiences, but there isn't a company in the world that wouldn't benefit by it. And I'll come back to Apple, right? Goods manufacturer. Well, guess what? They got into tons of services, and including iTunes and that sort of thing, and app store, but also into experiences with the Apple stores. In fact, I can still remember when Steve Jobs announced that Apple was going into retail in, I want to say 2006, but somewhere around there. And he got lambasted in the business press because people said, you're a designer and manufacturer. What are you doing getting into retail, right? You're going to tick off your channel partners and you're going to fail at it because you don't know how to do it. But they succeeded very much because they took an experience mindset. They said, we're not just going to create a store, we're going to create an experience where everything in here is live, where people can, again, play with it and use it and experience it before they buy it. And that has proven out that they're actually the number one retailer in the world today.
Yeah, the interesting thing about experiences is that if you want to move your company to an experience-based company where you're providing experiences for your customers, you have to think about your processes before you do it. And you have to design systems to become an experience-based company. I mean, when in my opinion, probably the king, queen, and emperor of this is Disney.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Disney, if you ever go down and study Disney, you'll find out they micromanage every little piece of the park. Yep. And they do that so they can manage the experience of their guests.
Right. Yeah. What you're exactly right. I always call Disney the premier experience stager in the world. And one of the key things that you're pointing to is their intentionality. Is that they intentionally design everything, they intentionally manage everything, they intentionally manicure everything to give you a distinct set of impressions that create that experience in your mind.
Yeah, this was a zillion years ago, back when I had my vending company. And I went down there and I did their quality management course. And they went and they talked about their parking lot, on why they charge $5 to park. And I came to find out that if you go to the Orlando property and you lose your car, they know where it is by what
Right.
time you came in the park. Exactly. And what hotel you were staying at. Which, who thinks about those things?
Right. They right. And then they understand that that's a key element, that you sort of ruin your day if you can't find your car at the end of it, if it takes you a half hour, 45 minutes to figure out where you are. And so they intentionally designed how we're going to park people, where we know based on when they come in exactly where that car is and can take them right to it. That's all you got to know.
One of the things about designing experiences is you have to design systems to support the experience. And in my experience of doing that, there's two things that happen when I design an experience. My customers, most importantly, know what to expect. And my employees, people working with me, know what the definition of excellence is, so they can do it. Does that make sense?
Yes, with one proviso, but I mean, they absolutely know what they have to do, right? That's why you need to direct them to act. Have you ever, Josh, had franchise businesses?
I have talked to franchise businesses. I've never owned one myself.
All right. Well, one of the things I always recommend to franchise businesses is they always have these service standards, right? That you've got to follow these service standards to be able to qualify, right, and continue to qualify, or we can take your franchise away. And one of the things they've recommended to franchise businesses and it very much applies to the processes that you're talking about in any business, is to separate out the what versus the how standards. That here is the what that you need to do, but then talk distinctly about the hows, because that really puts that emphasis on the theater that they have to create, on the impressions that they're making in people's minds, and again on that intentionality. One of the basic acting techniques is called act with intention, right? Which is knowing the how you're doing something and the why of it, not just what it is. The stage direction may say, knock on door, but how you knock on that door is very important to your character, to the plot, and so forth. And the same thing with any business that you're talking about. Now, the one proviso I would say is that you don't necessarily want, and with an experience, you don't necessarily want customers to know everything that's going to happen. That you want a part of theater is a dramatic structure. You want a dramatic structure that rises up to a climax and comes back down again. Right? If you go to a movie and you already know how it's going to end, well, it's not going to be a great movie. Right? You're not going to be immersed and engaged in it. Now, this sort of depends on the experience that you're providing. But even in services, what I encourage companies to do is think about creating suspense and anticipation, right? Where they don't know exactly what's going to happen or how it's going to happen, perhaps. And that allows that dramatic arc that prevents it from being just a mundane, flat experience to one that, again, rises up and comes back down again. And that's how memories are created.
Yeah, absolutely. That's my, I think the why is really an important piece, which comes to what are the values that your company has. Because if you do that and you tie your values in there, then the whys become more impactful and the experience is actually more consistent and will be more well received by your tribe because they know what you're about. You can't be all things, all people, has been my experience.
Right.
So keep using the word experience too much today. Anyway,
well, that's
Joe,
a very expansive word.
Yeah. Unfortunately, Joe, we are out of time. And, I'm going to hope that some of our blue collar business owners are saying, I want to become certified so I can take this experience stuff into my business and make it a whole lot better. So how do people find you? And if they wanted to find out more information about your certification, what would they do?
Right. Well, you've got it right there on the screen. You can go to www.strategichorizons.com and you can there find out about a certification course. And I should mention that we do, because the pandemic, have virtual options that we have done a number of times since that started. We've got a virtual course coming up the week of August 16th, where it's not a full days. It's 5 half days, like 4 to 4.5 hours that we do it in. So you can find that out there, and the virtual is half the price of the physical course. You can also, and you can find my bio and all of our information about books and articles. And there are many articles that even apply to individual businesses, individual industries, that you can find on the website as resources, as well as our own thoughts posts. And then you can also follow me on Twitter at Joe Pine, or connect with me on LinkedIn /Joe Pine. And I'll respond to connect with anybody who wants, and love to talk about this stuff.
Cool. So I've got 2 things I would like you to do. One is, please go and give this show an honest rating and review. It's really, really important. You can go to iTunes, you go to Spotify, or wherever else you listen to the podcast, and please leave us an honest rating and review. If you love us, you can say so. If you hate us, I hope you don't, but you can say that too. And the second thing is, my second book is out in the wild now. It's pretty easy to get it. It's at all the normal places you get books. You can also get it at our website, which is www.salereadycompany.com. And if you buy the book there, we have a whole bunch of bonuses that you get free. And for the first 50 people that buy the book on the site, I'll give you a free 20-minute coaching session. So this is Josh Patrick. You're with Joe Pine. We're at Cracking the Cash Flow Code. Thanks a lot for stopping by. I hope to see you back here really soon.